Get ready to hear the truth about America. A news show that isn't allergic to the facts. The Bold Conservative. Now, here is your host, James Ledbetter.
Hello to all my bold conservatives out there today. Man, we have an action-packed thriller for you today. An action-packed thriller that's just for you. And it has to do with the Mueller investigation. So first, we're going to be discussing how Robert Mueller, or the AG, or any prosecutor in the country, none of these people have the power to, quote, exonerate anybody. Because proving innocence is next to impossible. Because our justice system is flawed. A lot of people that are guilty can't be proven guilty, so they're set free. So there's a lot of people in the country that have done certain things. So that's why the legal system is set up to where you have to prove me guilty, because proven innocence is almost impossible. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is the Bold Conservative Show. So, Representative Michael Turner, he is a Republican in Ohio, blasted Mueller for saying that his report did not exonerate President Trump. Now, the report did not say that he exonerated Trump. Why? Because he has no power to exonerate Trump. And this is what Michael Turner was talking about. But first, we're going to talk about our sponsor, Bluehost Website Hosting, is one of the top recommended WordPress providers by WordPress.org. Enjoy hassle-free WordPress installation on all accounts. Or you can choose one of their beautifully pre-built templates to get started. Trained in-house experts are there to help 24/7. Their robust help center includes guides, video tutorials, and more. Try Bluehost and love them, or get a refund within 30 days of signing up. Not too many website hosts can actually say that. Your satisfaction is their top priority. Also, get access to marketing services, tools, and paid ad credits to boost your website's global reach. Get a special deal of only $3.95 per month when you visit them at bluehost.com/track/theboldconservative. The link will be in the description. Get your beautiful website hosted today. All right. So Michael Turner blew the exoneration thing clear out of the water. Because not only does Robert Mueller not have the power to exonerate, but neither does the AG or any other prosecutor in the land. The statement about exoneration is misleading, and it's meaningless. It colors this investigation one word about the entire portion of your report, and it's a meaningless word that has no legal meaning, and it has colored your entire report, Turner told Mueller during the hearing. And this is how Michael Turner started his questioning.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus on one word in your report. It's the second to the last word in the report. It's exonerate. The report states, accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it does not exonerate him. Now, in the judiciary hearing, in your prior testimony, you've already agreed with Mr. Radcliffe that exonerate is not a legal term, that there is not a legal test for this. So I have a question for you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, does the Attorney General have the power or authority to exonerate? Now, what I'm putting up here is the United States Code. This is where the Attorney General gets his power, and the Constitution, and the annotated cases of these, which we've searched. We even went to your law school, because I went to Case Western, but I thought maybe your law school teaches it differently, and we got the criminal law textbook from your law school. Mr. Mueller, nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate. There's no office of exoneration at the Attorney General's office. There's no certificate at the bottom of his desk. Mr. Mueller, would you agree with me that the Attorney General does not have the power to exonerate?
So Michael Turner came into the hearing knowing what he was going after. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the reason why Mueller decided that he was going to use that word. And it wasn't for AG Barr. It wasn't for people that know that he has no power to exonerate. AG Barr has done this a time or two. So AG Barr knows that Robert Mueller has no power whatsoever to exonerate. So then why did Robert Mueller use the word exonerate if it's not even a legal term? It's nowhere, no one uses it because it's impossible to exonerate anybody. We live in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty. However, here's the thing. In Robert Mueller's world, Trump was already guilty to begin with, in his mind. And also, all of the attorneys that he put on his team already pegged President Trump as guilty. So you have a whole list of attorneys that Robert Mueller hired to investigate Trump that already thought he was guilty, and they were trying to prove him guilty. Okay, well, that's what prosecutors do. That's what investigators do, because they cannot prove you innocent. It's not Trump's job to prove himself innocent. However, you have all of these people on Twitter and everything else saying, well, he couldn't prove himself innocent because it's impossible. It's impossible to prove yourself innocent. But anyway, this is how Mueller chose to answer that question for Michael Turner.
I'm going to pass on that.
Why?
Because it embroils us in a legal discussion, and I'm not prepared to do a legal discussion in that arena.
Well, Mr. Mueller, you would not disagree with me when I say that there is no place that the Attorney General has the power to exonerate, and he's not been given that authority. You would not.
Again, I'm not going to. I take your question.
Great. Well, the one thing that I guess is that the Attorney General probably knows that he can't exonerate either, and that's the part that kind of confuses me. Because if the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, then you don't have the power to exonerate, and I believe he knows he doesn't have the power to exonerate. And so this is the part that I don't understand. If your report is to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, and he knows that you do not have that power, you don't have to tell him that you're not exonerating the president.
You see what I'm saying? It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense because he didn't want to answer the question. He didn't want to answer that question at all. And there's 5 other questions that Robert Mueller could not or would not answer. Jim Jordan asked, why charge Russians but not Joseph Mifsud? And Jordan said this, why didn't you charge him with a crime? Jordan asked Mueller, of MSNBC. I can't get into internal deliberations regarding who would or would not be charged, Mueller said. Then Jordan said, but you charged a lot of other people. And Mueller said, well, I can't get into that, and it's obvious that we can't get into charging decisions. Then, when the special counsel's office interviewed Muellers, did he lie to you also? And Mueller said he couldn't get into that. So he refused to answer any of those questions. Next, Mueller would not allow any dossier questions at all. As a matter of fact, Mueller made it clear from the get-go that he would not answer any questions related to Christopher Steele and his dossier. And Mueller said, I quote, I am unable to address question about the opening of the FBI Russia investigation, which occurred months ago or before my appointment, or matters related to the so-called Steele dossier. These matters are the subject of an ongoing review by the department. Any questions on these topics should therefore be directed to the FBI or the Department of Justice. And I'm just thinking, how convenient that he can't answer any questions about the document that created the entire investigation to begin with. It was all a political show. And this is why I say that, because Michael Turner, at the end of his questioning, pointed out that since Robert Mueller didn't know, or since Robert Mueller knew that he couldn't exonerate Trump, Bill Barr had to have known that Robert Mueller couldn't exonerate Trump. So his press conference and his report wasn't for Bill Barr. It was for the naive people that believes whatever Mueller had to say. And that's including the press. Check this out.
He knows this already. So then that kind of changed the context for the report.
No, we included in the report for exactly that reason. He may not know it, and he should know it.
So you believe that the attorney Bill Barr believes that somewhere in the hallways of the Department of Justice there's an office of exoneration?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, I believe he knows, and I don't believe you put that in there for Mr. Barr. I think you put that in there for exactly what I'm going to discuss next, and that is, so the Washington Post yesterday, when speaking of your report, the article said Trump could not be exonerated of trying to obstruct the investigation itself. Trump could not be exonerated. Now, that statement is correct, Mr. Mueller, isn't it, in that no one can be exonerated? The reporter wrote this. This reporter can't be exonerated. Mr. Mueller, you can't be exonerated. In fact, in our criminal justice system, there is no power or authority to exonerate. Now, this is my concern, Mr. Mueller. This is the headline on all of the news channels while you were testifying today. Mueller, Trump was not exonerated. Now, Mr. Mueller, what you know is that this can't say Mueller exonerated Trump, because you don't have the power or authority to exonerate Trump. You have no more power to declare him exonerated than you have the power to declare him Anderson Cooper. So the problem that I have here is that since there's no one in the criminal justice system that has that power, the president pardons, he doesn't exonerate. Courts and juries don't declare innocent, they declare not guilty. They don't even declare exoneration. The statement about exoneration is misleading, and it's meaningless, and it colors this investigation one word out of the entire portion of your report, and it's a meaningless word that has no legal meaning, and it has colored your entire report.
So I'm under the understanding that Robert Mueller was talking to the press, because the press aren't lawyers. They don't have law degrees. They're there to put out titles that get clicks. In other words, and this is proof of it, during the entire Mueller investigation, during the entire thing, you could go at any given time to MSNBC or CNN and look at the titles of the articles or the videos on YouTube, and each one was talking about how Mueller did not exonerate Trump. Okay, that was designed to get clicks. That was designed to confuse their listeners into thinking that, hey, Mueller didn't exonerate Trump. That must mean that he's guilty. That must mean that there's a chance that he's guilty. Interesting. Because that's all they were trying to do and that's all Mueller was trying to do, was to give the Democrats a way to keep this ridiculous conspiracy theory going. And that's what they're doing. The media, MSNBC, they can't let it go, brothers and sisters. They cannot let it go. They have to keep going and keep going, trying to convince you that Trump is guilty, that Trump needs to be impeached. And there's no call for impeachment, and the Democrats know it. So what they have to do is to convince all the Democrats, because as you may remember, in the beginning of last week, there was a vote put forth by Al Green, a 3-time loser, for impeaching Trump. He wanted to get the articles of impeachment going. And so he offered up the proposal and got voted down. A majority of the American people in Congress know that there is no reason and no call for impeaching President Trump. Not only that, but it would hurt the Democrat Party so bad, and it makes them look like they don't know what they're doing, which we know they really don't. But they're going after, but they want to convince their constituents that there is a reason for impeaching Trump. And there's just nothing there. There's no there. So for the next 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to see CNN, MSNBC going after President Trump, coming up with lies. Just to they know better. Come on, man. These people know better than anybody else that what they're saying is not true. They're reporters. They're investigators, but they're not investigating. They're just putting out clickbait titles just to get clicks, just to get views. Because here's the thing: when Robert Mueller's report came out, it was a kick in the teeth for the Democrats. It was a kick in the teeth for the media, because they wanted there to be a there. And that's the sad part about this, is they want their president to fail so bad that they're willing to just make up things. And that's what they're doing. They have nothing better to do but to sit around all day coming up with clickbait titles and lies and conspiracy theories. And they're going to keep doing it. They're not going to stop. Nancy Pelosi yesterday specifically said in her press conference that Trump is still hiding things, and she needs to convince the American people that Trump is hiding things. What is he hiding? What is Trump hiding? What is Trump trying to cover up? They don't know. They can't come up with anything that Trump is covering up. Yet he's trying to cover something up. And that's the really sad part about this, folks. This is our Congress. This is our government. This is our news organizations coming up with this crazy nonsense that the President of the United States is somehow a Russian agent. And we elected a Russian agent into office to further Putin's agenda. And that's not the only thing that's really, really disturbing here. Mueller, during his whole testimony, was conflicted and confused. He literally gave the impression to me and to a lot of other people that he didn't know anything about what the report said. Like, he didn't write the report to begin with. And not only that, he hasn't even read the report. So he hasn't read the report because every time one of the representatives would come up with something that's in the report, he had to ask again, where's that at? Where's that located? Where are you reading that from? It's like he has no clue what was written in that report. So this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that not only did he not write it, but the people who did write it didn't read it to him and get his approval. He just straight up signed it because he trusted the people that were writing it, apparently. Very shaky, seemingly confused and shaken, Robert Mueller was undergoing a heated hearing on the Hill. So far, Robert Mueller has appeared confused, has already contradicted his own report regarding collusion. The first Republican to question Mueller was Doug Collins, who asked the former special counsel if collusion and conspiracy were the same thing. And this is what he asked. Mr. Mueller initially said no, suggesting he thought the terms were not the same, and giving Democrats some hope that he would deliver them the goods on their claim that Mr. Trump did in fact collude with Russia in 2016. And that's according to the Washington Times. However, as Mr. Collins confronted Mr. Mueller with his own words, mind you, it's not like Collins was coming up with just random words and he was just reading out of news articles. He was literally reading Mr. Mueller's own report, and were supposed to be his own words. When Mueller signed off on that report to go ahead and turn it in, he should have read it thoroughly, and it's obvious that he did not, because he was trying to say in the report, he's saying that collusion and conspiracy are synonymous. Then during his hearing yesterday or the day before, he was saying that they are not synonymous. And then Doug Collins, who is a representative of Georgia, by the way, said, but you said in your report that it is. And then Robert Mueller backtracked. He backpedaled. And then he said, oh, well, then I go with whatever the report says then. He should, if Mueller wrote the report, he would have known what was in the report. If he even read the report, he would have known what was in the report. However, as Mr. Collins confronted Mueller with his own words on page 180 of volume 1 of his report, which it had written that the two words are largely synonymous. And if you go back to page 180 of volume 1, you'll see that Mueller specifically said that conspiracy and collusion are largely synonymous. So Mr. Mueller contradicted his own report, which are supposed to be his own words, but they're not. There's just no way. There's no way that Mueller wrote that or even read that. The memory loss of his own report then continued as Representative Steve Chabot asked Mueller about a firm called Fusion GPS mentioned in the report multiple times. Mueller is completely befuddled. I'm not familiar with that, he responded. So you mean to tell me that not only did he not read his report, but somehow Mr. Mueller is not even watching the news, reading news articles? I find this really hard to believe that Mr. Mueller, who was heading up the most important investigation in U.S. history. Think about this for a minute. He was in charge of investigation into whether or not our president was a Russian agent. So obviously Fusion GPS had to have came up somewhere in the investigation, and it did. It was all in his report, which makes us wonder if Robert Mueller was even competent enough at all to even head this investigation. Mind you, he is up in his age. He is getting more and more elderly each and every day. But to put him in charge of an investigation as important as this just seems odd to me, because he's shown over and over and over that he's not competent enough to head up this investigation at all, which is sad. So President Trump was investigated for these things by someone who didn't even know who the main actors were. Now keep in mind, Fusion GPS was the ones that were supposed to be getting the dirt that was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC to get dirt on President Trump. And out of that came the unverified, salacious Steele dossier that still to this day is not verified. And after Mueller's report come out, it pretty much debunked everything that that Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele said in the dossier. So what are we to believe here? Are we to believe that the Democrats appointed a mumbling, bumbling fool to investigate the President of the United States and determine whether or not he is a Russian asset? See, if you remember, all through the investigation, the Democrats were claiming that Robert Mueller is the savior of the country. He's going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that President Trump not only colluded with Russia, but obstructed justice by firing Comey. When asked about that, about President Trump's right to fire James Comey, Robert Mueller acknowledged that President Trump could fire James Comey at any time. But then he was asked, so what about special counsel? Doesn't he have the right to fire special counsel? And Robert Mueller stopped for a minute and said, well, no, I don't know about all that. Mr. Mueller, you have been in law enforcement and the justice system long enough to realize whether or not the President of the United States has the right to fire a special counsel. But he didn't know. So the whole Mueller testimony was damaging to the Democratic Party. It was damaging to all of those people that tried to claim that President Trump was a Russian agent. They just knew it. They had special evidence that they were waiting. They were only waiting on Robert Mueller to release his report, and then they were going to come out with their evidence. Well, Robert Mueller comes out with his report, and it said nothing like they thought it was going to say. As a matter of fact, it said that they found no evidence that Trump was a Russian agent, that Trump colluded with Russia. Then you have all the Democrats trying to point out, well, Robert Mueller's investigation wasn't a total waste. Look at all the indictments he come up with. Look at all the people in jail. But see, here's the thing. They refuse to acknowledge this, that all of the indictments that Robert Mueller made, not a single one had anything to do with President Trump, had nothing to do with colluding with Russia, had nothing to do at all with anything that they are trying to get people to assume. They were all tax evasion, bank fraud. Okay, good. We brought that up. It's in the light now. But none of this has anything to do with what Robert Mueller was investigating, which was the collusion with Russia and President Trump. He didn't find anything because there's nothing there. Interesting. Well, I thank you all for listening. We're running out of time. I thank you all for listening, and tune in tomorrow for a very special show. We have a lot to unpack, and so little time to do it. I thank you all for listening. Y'all have a really great day.